Thanks for tuning in to another episode of WGC Fits. Today we are going to talk about part 2 in this kind of little, I don't think we're debating.
No.
We're conversating.
Dialogue.
Conversating. We're going to go with that.
I don't know if that's a word.
I'm pretty sure it's not,
Okay.
but I like it. So, part 2, kind of again talking about the idea of golf club pricing, right?
So what's part 2?
Part 2 is maybe why the pricing has kind of fluctuated a little bit, at least kind of over our times in golf.
Especially depends on what you're buying too, because you
Correct.
can get like a $500 driver or $650 and you don't know what's going on there.
Correct, yeah. No, I mean, we call it what it is, right?
Before we get into this video, if you do like the video, just let us know with a little like button, click, and if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe.
We would greatly appreciate that. It makes Ian smile. He doesn't smile very often, so.
Anyways, back to the video.
So, part 2, why golf clubs are maybe a little bit more expensive, at least since we've been looking at them,
Yeah.
right? We're roughly the same age. I'm closer to you than anybody else here, so. So, let's go. Do you remember what some of the materials were and what some of the stuff was for golf clubs when you were starting off? Because I remember this pretty vividly.
I was just handed golf clubs.
So you might not have the same idea then. I remember like Uniflex shafts. I remember being given stuff that was just kind of funky. It felt light, didn't have much, sounded terrible,
Yeah.
right?
Like a Pong.
Well, I played with the yellow Sasquatch square driver.
The Sumo?
I played
Hey,
with the
I
Sumo.
thought that was a good club.
Hey, that was a great club. And truth be told, from a forgiveness factor, I don't care what anyone says, no drivers are ever going to be more forgiving than square drivers.
Yes. IQ, Callaway, best one on the market.
They sound
At the
horrible,
time. Yes.
and they don't go very far.
And they spun a lot.
They don't go very far. But you can hit them pretty straight.
Yes.
Right?
No, except for me at that age, but we'll continue.
Oh, dude, I used to bomb my Sumo, man. It sounded terrible, but I used to love that club. It just straight, like, 240. Yeah. That was a bomb back then. So...
That's our 4-irons.
it kind of is.
Anyways.
Your 4-iron, it's like a 2-iron for me.
Yeah.
Materials, right? And this is something that maybe the consumer doesn't generally understand or kind of get the insider on, right? Materials have changed a lot. In
Big
golf
time.
clubs, right? Shaft materials, manufacturing processes, the chemistry that goes into it, the R&D that goes into it.
I know Titleist had to change their whole face material just to get some extra ball speed.
Well,
back when Spieth was hitting it a little shorter than most guys, they basically re-engineered their whole face tech.
They made a new titanium.
Yes, they made a new titanium.
That's crazy,
Yeah.
right? Like to think about that. And, you know, we talk about this stuff and, you know, a lot of times golf companies, they sit there and they throw like these weird marketing things at it. And that kind of makes it a bit funny, right?
Yeah.
But there's actually quite a bit of R&D and development, and companies spend a significant amount to
Designing,
do all this,
yeah.
right? Like we talk about golf ball real quick, right? The thing that's changed the most in golf from a tech
the ball.
perspective is the golf ball.
Yeah.
The golf ball is why people hit it as far as they do. The golf ball is why we score as good as we score.
Yeah.
The golf ball is the thing that has changed the most by far out of anything, right? And knowing what companies spend
to develop
to
a new
develop
golf ball.
said golf ball,
Yeah, and test golf ball.
it's an unfathomable number.
And market for golf ball.
I'm not even going to say the number, but it's a big number.
It's a big
Okay. The golf ball has changed a lot, and the companies out there, they spend a significant amount of money to make that golf ball do what it does.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, we're talking about new stuff like titanium, forged carbon, normal carbon fiber. We're
Yeah.
talking about new materials and shafts. I remember when I think it was called like 40 ton, or maybe it's MR40. I think it's called
Yeah.
40 ton, which is like a unique kind of weave and material in graphite and carbon fiber. What's up?
Is face forging a new thing where they will cast a club but forge the face and put a new thing on
It is. That's a whole new,
That's another thing
whole new type of club has been developed.
Yeah.
Again, and we can talk about that as well. That's a very good point. That is very expensive
Yes.
compared to how other clubs are
Because
manufactured.
the back is casted, and then the face is forged, and then they weld.
And then you have to forge weld it, and that is
Yeah.
a long process.
Yeah.
So again, very expensive stuff goes into it, right?
Another tech thing that I thought was cool was the Blueprint S's, where it's still forged, but on the longer irons they put that
They have
cavity.
that cavity,
in.
and it's forged into the club.
Yeah.
Super cool.
That's an
And
extra process, though, that
It
you're
is,
paying for.
and I can tell you that was something that at first I wasn't sold on. We know this, right?
Yeah.
But after hitting them, that's literally why I have the clubs that I have, because I love them, right? I love that piece of the tech. It works really well,
Yeah.
right? But what I was gonna say is, I remember when like 40 ton, I think it's called, like, you know, carbon fiber or graphite or whatever, was introduced into some of the, I think it was the Tensei, or no, the Mitsubishi shafts at the time.
Mitsubishi,
That was like huge, right? And now, not only is there kind of bigger, better materials out there, but there's different, again, manufacturing processes, right? With like Velocor, right? That just makes all of this stuff better, but it's more expensive, right?
Yeah.
I got to see firsthand. I was in the Fujikura kind of build shops and headquarters, right? And got to see kind of how they make all their different materials and all their different shafts.
Just the quality control in Fujikura is amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like, believe it or not, the guy who paints all the shafts at Fujikura, he used to do pinstriping on hot rods. Like, they're all hand done. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about,
That's
right?
awesome.
And it's so cool when you think about stuff like that, right? All that stuff is just good. Now, you know, obviously there's mass production that kind of goes into it as well. So I'm not gonna sit there and say they're all hand painted, but a lot of the stuff is done to a very fine detail, and that's time consuming. That's not cheap.
But that's
you
what
know?
golfers want.
Exactly, because we all are searching for better. Because, like we said in the first part of this, right? Expensive toys.
Yes.
Right.
I'm in search for pretty, but that's what
Well, I already have pretty, so so it's just how it is, right? And I think that I'm not saying, you know, that everything is justifiable, right? Because I do still think that things can be a touch on the expensive side. But again, big picture, I actually still don't think that it's weird enough to say, and I'm going to give credit because I heard this in another podcast, and in all honesty, I can't remember who said this. But I remember at some point, golf equipment to me was described in this podcast as it's cheap but expensive at the same time. Considering what it is, considering the processes and what goes into it, expensive.
Yeah.
Right? Or, well, cheap, I should say.
Yeah.
But considering just the overall price tag on it, it's expensive.
Yeah.
You know?
But to think that all this tech has now gotten into like forged faces and like you can put tungsten and stuff, and the price hasn't gone up significantly a lot is a good thing.
Well, and that's it, right? I mean, Cobridges did it where they're 3D printing an iron set,
Yeah.
specifically moving where centers of gravity are, putting 100 grams of tungsten in it,
Yeah.
and then making a club that looks like a nice compact players club that, because of all that tech, is now more forgiving than, you know, your bigger, chunkier game improvement clubs.
That's awesome.
That's a crazy thing to think about. And
But
that
it
is
was-
not a cheap process.
But it was $3,000 a set.
It was, but all things considered, knowing again kind of what it could have been,
Yeah.
it's
That's not bad.
all I'm going to say is for how long they've been working on that club.
Yeah.
And when I first heard about that club, I'm surprised it wasn't more.
Oh, okay.
Almost like there's a point where, because of all this new tech that's been introduced, right, a new category of irons has been developed,
Yeah.
right, and that player's distance iron. That's what we're talking about, these hollow clubs, hollow bringing technology from woods in there, meaning more trampoline, ball speed, and all that kind of
I mean,
stuff.
there's
potential.
foam in these things now.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how much like just extra steps, processes, and pieces are in there.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I think that that's partly why.
Prices have gone up a little.
And again, I don't want to use the term justifiable because I'm not necessarily asking for or wanting more golf clubs to be higher priced. However, again, in a comparative window, I don't necessarily know if it's been affected as much as it should be.
Yeah.
A great example is, you guys all know Trent, right? Captain Center Strike. So he drove a car, right? And let's just say for purposes of it's a, you know, a 2022, you know, car, right?
Yeah.
Of X model, X make. He paid X dollars for said car. He then had to go out and buy another version of that car, got the same year, right? Has less features, same model, same make, but less features, specifically in the fact that it doesn't have a sunroof and some entertainment stuff going on.
Yeah.
Paid $8,000 more for it.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, I don't necessarily think we're at a point where we're getting less and still paying more in the golf industry. I still think that they are putting in as much as they can
Yeah.
to it to kind of make it as good as they can, right?
Yeah.
Because I do truly think that because everything is so good right now, right? If you develop an inferior product in today's day and age, it's going to become visible very quickly and you're going to lose it as a company.
Yeah.
You know, if you go back 25 years ago, right? It was Ping and Titleist. Ping and Titleist made the best stuff out there, and
Yeah.
no one really could keep up.
No.
You know,
And then TaylorMade came out with the Metalwood.
TaylorMade started kind of stepping up a little bit. Callaway caught on very
Yeah.
quickly as well. And next thing you know, we've got nowadays, right? Titleist, Ping, Cobra, Callaway, TaylorMade, Cleveland, Srixon, Mura, Epon,
Zexio.
Zexio,
Yeah, Mizuno.
right? Tons and tons of brands.
Crank.
And all these brands where, you know, really at face value, everything's pretty good,
Yeah.
right? And now it's more about, especially from a fitting perspective, finding those little niche things that are going to make the club better for you specifically versus, you know, I mean, we do it all the time with you. How different are numbers when we properly put you in the clubs from different manufacturers, let's say a driver, that's really kind of fit pretty well. As long as it's not something that's super closed, we're not talking about massive differences,
No.
right? The driver bracket was far closer than we thought it was going to be,
Yes.
put it that way, you know? Just interesting things to think about, you know? It's such a competitive window right now that I don't think companies can afford to do, for example, what's going on with Trent, where he had to pay more for the same thing that has less features.
Yes.
You know, and you know, I don't think, at least I can't see a point where we'd ever get to that in the golf
I don't
industry.
think so.
Because again, like I said, it's such a small world and it is such a competitive world that the minute we get to that point, I don't think you can stay relevant with inferior product. You know?
Agreed.
And it's not something I don't think it's a good business model.
No.
You know? So interesting kind of thing. So in the end of the day, do you think that technology is welcome in the golf industry?
Big time.
Do you think it has a home in the golf industry?
Big time.
Do you want more of it in the golf industry?
Sure.
Well, you're your honest opinion. Because
In certain things, yes.
okay, and I guess this could lead to maybe a little side point. Is there too much of it?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
So
Does
again,
this lead into part 3?
well, no, I want to touch on one more thing, right? Which would be, if we're going to sit there and talk about how we don't think that things are out of hand, right? Maybe verging on silly from a
Some
price
marketing
perspective.
things can be gimmicky, yes.
Well, and that's it, right? I think that from a marketing perspective, maybe from a marketing perspective, we're getting into a window of a little bit silly.
But if there's improvement, sure.
Exactly, right? I guess the change that I would like to see is maybe less marketing and maybe more, I don't know how to say it. I guess maybe more realistic expectations from presentation from the marketing perspective.
Yes.
Right? Does that make
makes
sense?
sense,
You know, all companies, for as long as I've been doing this, all say the same thing. They all promise 10 to 12 yards every year.
Yeah.
Right?
Which
Do you hit the ball?
We'd be
Do you
at
hit the ball?
400 yards
Yeah.
by now.
Oh, more than that. I mean, you're pretty close to 4 already.
Let's calm down.
I'm saying, I was going to say, do you hit the ball 590 yards yet?
I wish.
No, I don't. You know, it's just how it works. So maybe that is something where we could see a little bit of a shift. But I don't necessarily think that I want less tech in
Yeah.
my clubs. For example, I play the Blueprint S's. That's a pretty player, you know, kind of looking and feeling club.
Yeah.
Still got a good chunk of tech in it.
Yeah.
I mean, the paint, the finish,
That is a good finish.
There's even tech in that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's an interesting kind of pointed topic. And I guess for anyone who thinks that maybe the price is getting a bit steep, that would kind of lead us into the next part that we're going to talk about, because there's actually stuff that's pretty decent out there that doesn't have as high of a price point associated with it.
Yeah.
Has trade-offs, you know, if you will, but not necessarily
Are bad.
all bad. You
Yeah.
just have to understand what you're getting in bed with, you know? So
Stay tuned for that one.
I think we'll finish up there with that.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Once again, hot topics. So if you guys have any comments that you would like to kind of say down below the description in the comment section, let us know. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.